Welcome, everybody. It's been a little while since we've done this, but I guess now's a great time to jump into it as we're starting to see the market picking up. Just a reminder today, we're going to be addressing points specifically around the failure of recruitment processes. So definitely one for candidates to look at, but also probably more aimed at clients, hiring managers, talent acquisition, anybody involved in that hiring process. So I guess to begin with, Crystal, would you like to give a little bit of an introduction to yourself?
Yeah, well, it's nice to see if anyone is rejoining again. But for those of you who are new, my name is Crystal Leung. So I work as a senior recruitment consultant at SEC Life Sciences. I lead our US division here, helping take care of all the end-to-end recruitment needs for our biopharma clients from coast to coast, based in the States.
Nice. And I'm Jacob Perrett. I am the sales director. I kind of support the day-to-day activities here at SEC. I've got about 5 years of focus across the life sciences space, specifically within technical operations. I like to focus more on the MSAT, process development side of things. The majority of my experience actually has been over in the US as well, but starting to transition back to Europe to support our clients over here. Great. So like we mentioned, we are going to be talking a lot today about the points of failure within the recruitment process. And the reason why we thought now would be a really good time to jump onto this is we're starting to see an increase in market activity. I think anyone that's even remotely involved in the market at the moment, anyone that's even just scrolling through LinkedIn can start to see more and more people changing jobs, more roles coming live, which is really positive to see given the turbulent, I guess, 12 to 18 months that we've seen. So it's an exciting time, but whilst it's exciting, I think it's really important that people start to look at what their hiring process looks like, resolving any issues that they might be facing in their recruitment process so that they can be ahead of the game, outdoing the competition, and making sure that they're securing the best talent possible to create a not only great team, but getting product to market as quickly as possible.
And we're hoping that this will be informative to all of you because, we come from a very firsthand sort of a ground up approach when it comes to speaking with the talent pool out there, understanding what people are looking for, their personal experiences in any recruitment processes that they've been involved with, as well as any case studies that we've learned working with our clients. We're going to talk about the goods and the bads, and hopefully you guys can take away some of these things to apply into your own recruitment processes. We do have a couple of moderators on, so if anyone has any questions, please feel free to share it in the chat and we will aim to, get to those at the end.
Great, cool. So let's kick off. The first thing that we are going to be talking about really is why it's so important to get that hiring process right. Crystal obviously focused a lot with clients at the moment over in the US. Do you want to kick off, walk through anything that you've seen?
There's so much to kind of go into here, right? But I guess, the crucial part when it comes to us seeing the market kicking back up and getting the recruitment processes right is that, inevitably we have a lot of talent out there right now. Unfortunately, with all the mass layoffs that has happened over the year and a half, 2 years, we are seeing more supply than there is demand. But why is that the case still, even though that's what it's like? Clients sometimes still have a hard time finding and identifying the right kinds of people. There can be hundreds of applications to a role, but realistically only 2 to 3% are relevant. Why is that the case? How can we go about mitigating any long-term impacts that bringing on the wrong hire will have? So I guess to kind of kick things off here, one of the core things we want to talk about is what it looks like from the candidate's perspective, right? For all you TAs, HRs, and hiring managers out there. So for those great top candidates that everyone wants to bring on, let's be real, they've got multiple job offers on the table. Even if they might be out of the market for a while, as soon as it picks back up, especially if their skill set is at high demand, people are vying for the same kind of talent. So what are you going to do to make you stand out in that recruitment process to make yourself as efficient and as appealing as possible to that candidate? But not only to that candidate, because people talk. We work in a small industry. So how do you make sure that your reputation stays right and that people, even if they don't take the job, can potentially recommend you to other colleagues that might be looking? And so the reputation impact is something that we have seen negatively, unfortunately, affect some of the clients that we actually work with. We can provide a couple case studies, of course, not name dropping anyone in particular, but some of these clients that have great sort of multinational global reputations, they don't always have a very clean recruitment process. And that might not necessarily be the company's fault. They may just have a lot of individuals to go through with in the process. They have a lot of steps to go through, but that makes it even more important to make sure that the process is clean and that there's communication, open communication with the candidate. We all hear candidates complaining all the time about how, oh, I never hear back. I've never heard back. I haven't heard back in weeks. And that's fine to some extent. Usually, even no update is an update for these people, right? So even informing them, hey, listen, we've got nothing right now, it hasn't progressed, is still a touch point that would be important to maintain your reputation in the talent pool. Because the last thing you want, and it's happened many times before, working on a very senior hire actually for one of our clients who supposedly has a great name on the market, of course, but because of how difficult the hiring process has been, when it comes to looking for even additional candidates to put in for the role, a lot of people are unwilling to move forward because they've heard through the grapevine how poor the process has been, how uneven it has been, how many reiterations the job description has gone through. So all of these aspects we will, of course, expand on further, which brings me to the next point, which is peer recommendations, such an important part of the recruitment process. I mean, we all know it's about who we know. I mean, it's about what we know, of course. You got to have the skill set, but who we know is even more important. Great people recommend great people. I'm sure we can all agree, right? And that's why making sure you have those connections, you stay healthy in that sort of networking pool is so crucial that when you want to bring someone on who you think is a great fit, if they're a great fit and they've got the skills and capability to do the job, you bet that they must know a handful of other people that could probably bring them into the team as well to help you fill any roles that you might have or to create a more robust team of skill sets and of talent that can contribute to your product pipeline. And I guess I'm going to leave Jacob to finish the rest because I've gone ahead there.
No, it sounds good. Thanks for that insight, Crystal. Yeah, I think for me, obviously, from my experience, it's just making sure that, we are even as a company ourselves, right? When we're looking to hire, we are making an investment every single time into making sure that we're bringing the right person on board, and actually making sure that you've got the right hiring process in place can help reduce any risk involved with making an incorrect hire, but also reduce the risk in terms of wasted output. Obviously, bringing in other hiring managers, senior leaders within a business, the team themselves, if it's a potential leadership opportunity, there's a lot of time that's wasted. Moving those guys, changing their schedules, etc. So making sure that before you even start the hiring process, making sure to get it right, make it streamlined, make it transparent. And like Crystal has harped on about, making sure that it's a memorable experience. Positive impressions in our market is critical for success within your hiring. You have to remember that we're not necessarily getting new candidates every single year with experience coming out of universities or colleges. So a lot of the time, you might interview someone and they might now not be the right fit for your role. But if you create a positive interview process with feedback, with transparency, with openness, 9 times out of 10, that person will want to reapply again to a role maybe a year or 2 years down the line when they do have enough experience. And the last thing you want to do is have a interview process where they have a negative experience, which results in them not wanting to pursue with you as an organization in the future. And I guess on that as well, in the modern day, aside from just people speaking to each other, there are other outlets out there as well where people can start to review companies. There's a lot of reviews on Glassdoor, for example, on companies when their hiring process has been poor, where they haven't been transparent or they've led candidates on. So making sure that you're clear in your hiring process is going to be integral for success moving forward, especially as we mentioned, the market is picking up. You want to make sure that you're getting first movement advantage.
And I guess to wrap this section up a little bit, why is it important to get the hiring process right now? It's always important, but right now is extra crucial because we are seeing the market picking back up. So what this means is that a lot of those out there who are vying for jobs will, to be honest with you, probably pick up anything first that comes their way. And do you mitigate recruiting a mishire? That is probably an even more important question that we take into consideration when we're looking to bring on the right kinds of people. There are so many things to consider. Is the salary truly what they want? Are they going to jump ship at the next best available opportunity when there's more on the market? Is the cultural fit a right one? Are they making this decision in haste? Are you making the decision in haste? So making sure that we address all the bottlenecks to recruitment processes is an essential part of making sure that we don't hire the wrong people, invest a boatload of cash into making the wrong hire, and for them to essentially leave for a misfit, down the line when the demand will probably be more than the supply, as it always ends up happening. And I think that's a great transition to our next.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of those, right, where we've talked about why it's important, but actually, what are the mistakes that we see a lot of the time with clients? And actually, how do you rectify those mistakes? So, I think an important one to kick off with actually is making sure that one of the problems we see is actually not giving candidates enough information at the get-go about the opportunity, about the role, about the company themselves. It's an even playing field. Even if you're the largest pharmaceutical company out there at the moment, every sector, every individual team has their way of working, has a different experience, has a different process. So making sure that you allow the candidate to prepare as much as possible for the interview process by providing as much detailed data and whether it be scripts, whether it be overviews of the people that they're going to be interviewing with, what the team structure looks like, even down to small things of relocation. What do the local schools look like if they have a family? Whether there's any local libraries, what kind of extracurricular activities are there outside of work to be able to not only attract talent, but also show that you're not just thinking about in the office, you're also looking at externally outside of that as well.
And that's something that, we try to do with all the candidates that we essentially screened for any of the roles as well. So providing them with all the necessary information as much as we know, as going as deeply into who are the immediate cross-functional leaders that you might be interacting with and who may be dotted line reports. So, people can go and do their own information gathering and their own research because these things are important, of course, for longevity. And like Jacob talked about, the relocation aspect, which we do see more and more as a lot of companies are doing return to office, which is absolutely fine. There are a lot of candidates out there who would prefer to be in office for professional growth and networking reasons as well. But making sure that we provide them with the relevant information from the get-go is incredibly crucial to make sure that we don't wait until the final decision date and then they say, you know what, I looked and there are no preschools that are good enough for my kids. So we do take a lot of extra steps to make sure we provide them with as much information as possible into such new locations so that they can make an informed decision before they go forward with the interview process to help save time. And that leads on to another maybe common mistake, which is when it comes to the interview process itself, is making it seem like an exam. Um, as Jacob already talked about, it's a two-way street. And as much as it is important to evaluate someone on their hard skill set, on their experiences, making sure that the candidate feels confident in explaining their situation is very important. What this looks like is giving the candidate important information to prep ahead of time. So for example, if it's a leadership role, this is a particular case study that we've worked on, then we will tell them exactly at which stage of the interview process is it more about cultural fit and at which stage of the interview process is it more about leadership capabilities or technical scientific skill. This is not to say that we're over preparing the candidate. We are simply giving them the best chance to talk about the most relevant details to the person that's interviewing them. And that's how we try to set people up for success. People have what they have and they don't have what they don't have. You can't over prepare them, but it gives them the best chance to show you what they will have, and allow them to explore how the cultural fit will look like as well when they interview with the panelists, with the hiring managers on your team.
Definitely. Yeah. At the end of the day, you shouldn't be there to try and catch someone out. If a candidate is interviewing for a role, it's because they want that role. As a hiring team, you shouldn't be setting an exam-like interview process in order to catch them out. Making them as happy and comfortable as possible. It's a two-way street. It's a conversation. You want to fill the role, they want to fill the role themselves. So making sure that you create a good interview process is integral. I think another thing that we're seeing a lot as well, Crystal, is the underestimation of talent acquisition and specifically their role within the hiring process. I know that you're probably a little bit closer to the TAs at the moment with roles that you're working on, but do you want to go into that in a bit more detail?
Yeah, absolutely. So to give all the TAs and HRs who are watching this right now some insight into maybe what we're hearing on the market, and we try to mitigate this as much as possible, right? But in all frankness, a lot of candidates have under impression that the first screening call with HRTA is quote unquote not as important. They see it as a mere obstacle to get through the first front door, right? But of course, we understand the importance and how crucial a screening call is with the HR and talent acquisition. You guys are there to make sure that the basics are aligned. And if there are important questions to consider, such as relocation, for example, or professional goals, those are all very important things to consider before we move someone along to the hiring manager and getting the hiring manager and the team excited about this candidate. And so what we encourage you to do if you have a very robust talent acquisition team is to make sure that it is streamlined as much as possible. You have one point of contact perhaps for every subsector of groups that you are trying to interview so that the candidates don't feel like they're being passed along all the time. That is usually what makes them feel lesser and makes them feel that the talent acquisition or HR point of contact is quote unquote less important. Once again, that is not what we're saying at all, but we want to help you mitigate that impression as much as possible. And so making sure to have them understand what your role is there to do, such as making sure that the things are aligned, is going to be good for any further progressions in the interview process.
And that initial conversation is exactly like walking into a shop. It's the first person they see, being a talent acquisition or HR, or whoever is the first point of contact or the first interview. You guys set the standard for what the interview process looks like. You set the standard of what the company looks like, what the culture sounds and seems like. So it's an integral part for you guys to make sure that, yeah, prepared as much as possible. You're clear in terms of the questions that you need, but also making sure that you ask the candidates that are interviewing, is there any additional information that you would need in order to make a decision, in order to move forward with the next step? Because we're understanding that, you know, at the moment you might be in multiple processes. How do we go forward from here? How do we put our best foot forward? Something that I'm really, I would say, passionate about is definitely making sure that hiring processes involve the team as much as possible, even if it's down to the most junior of candidates joining, whether straight out of university or college, or whether it's the most senior person at all. I think delaying the quote unquote meet the team is a common mistake that companies make. Making sure that you can bring in everyone that would be involved in the hiring process sooner rather than later is a great way to understand the cultural fit, because yes, you can get the technical skill set of all of the candidates there on a CV, on a resume, but what you can't understand or see from that CV or resume is the cultural fit. Would you rather have someone that might miss a couple of boxes in terms of technical skill set, but have the right cultural fit to the rest of the team, compared to someone that doesn't necessarily align but fits all the boxes? I think it's easier to work with someone that fits into the team. So making sure that you bring the team in earlier rather than later in the process is really, really important. But with that in mind, I think the other mistake that a lot of companies make is if they're going through that panel exercise, which is really common in the process and is definitely something that I think we push for with a lot of our clients, and when we're reviewing the processes for them, one of the most important things is making sure that is aligned in terms of what types of questions are being asked. There's nothing more disappointing than having a debrief with a candidate who's gone through 5, 6, 7 individual one-to-one panel discussions, who's walking out and saying, I actually didn't learn too much. All the questions were exactly the same. It just felt like a repetitive process. I think being able to, yes, allow every individual that is interviewing a potential candidate, a potential future employee, allowing them to have autonomy in terms of the questions that they ask, but making sure that they're all aware of what they might be asking. So what do we mean by that as well? It's also making sure that you're upskilling anyone that's going to be jumping on. Not only are they representing you as a client, putting your brand and your awareness out there, but they're also, we need to make sure that they're aware of the questions that they're asking. So that's really, really key. And again, something that I think a lot of companies miss out on.
And when you bring in the panelists, as we all know, it's very difficult to find, common times between panelists to host these interviews, but ensuring that the panel is aligned is very important. Have them ask the questions that are relevant to their function and to their team, but ensuring that they're all looking out for the same thing in that candidate is going to be so important for that final call. Too many times have we seen 7, 8, 9, 10 panelists being involved in the entire interview process. And then suddenly you have too many voices. Who do you listen to? Who makes the final call? Of course, the more people you bring in, the more opinions there are going to be. So ensuring that you provide the candidate with that immediate team that they will be interacting with as a first face-to-face so that they know, hey, listen, these 3, 4 people are going to the people that I'm going to be working with day to day. And then you can maybe progress them into a sort of second removed position or function that they might be working with closely, and making sure that those individuals are aligned into what they're looking for in a team member is great. So as the, I guess, middleman and point of contact between your internal functional groups as HR and TA, you should, when you debrief your team, ask them the same questions. If you're trying to evaluate leadership capabilities, make sure you ask them, what did you get from this person's leadership capabilities? And not just to give them free rein to tell you, well, anything really that can, too many opinions is always makes the whole thing a little bit oozy.
I think another element, right, is eliminating the bottlenecks. Overlooking any negative company perceptions that might be out there on the market. Whether it be through reviews that are online, whether it be through restructuring that's happened, which is obviously a common theme that we've had, whether it be reducing down specific trials that you're working on at the moment, lack of funding in certain areas. I think being completely transparent from the get-go sets a really good standard to say, hey, look, this is us as a business right now, but this is where we are looking to go into the future. And this is why we're looking for this specific role to be filled to help us get from point A to point B. So yeah, from the get-go, be completely transparent. Everybody's got issues within their businesses. No one is perfect, but as long as you understand and identify what those issues are and you discuss them nice and early on, you'll be able to probably turn someone that might have a little bit of a negative view on your business into having more of a positive view.
Absolutely. And to continue on that, making sure that there's a positive view on the company, as internal talent acquisition and human resources partners, making sure timeframes are aligned with your hiring team is incredibly important. And a way we suggest individuals to do this is to give your hiring managers a faux time frame, right? For example, telling them, hey, if I don't hear back within 48 hours after you've interviewed this candidate, I am going to assume that it's a rejection and it's a no, because we don't want the candidate waiting. There can be times when maybe a couple weeks have passed, even a couple months I've experienced where the team have gone back and said, hey, we want to pick this candidate back up again. Even if the candidate is interested, I'll be honest, talking to them, they're like, well, I could give it a try, but I don't know how important, this role really is to them. Why did they have such a lag in communication? Is this what it's going to be like when I join the company? Is it going to be hard to get to get through red tape to get the decisions being made. So as internal, I believe that a great way to mitigate this is to pose faux timelines. And if the hiring manager is not quite happy with it, then at least you can say, all right, well, we can lengthen it, but we still need to get back to this candidate within a week and give them an update.
Yeah, and I guess throwing in the working with an external agency side of that, which we haven't mentioned yet, but a big thing is just making sure that you're keeping everybody in the loop. If you know that a hiring manager is going to be away on a conference and a candidate has applied or has been put forward for a role, just be really clear with them in terms of, look, they're away right now. We're looking to get feedback to you by this date. Until then, if there's any additional information that we can get over to you, whether it be because of relocation, the team structure, even down to compensation and benefits, it's always good to kind of include those during that time period. Whew. God, there's a lot of things and a lot of mistakes that some companies go through, right? I think a really, really key one before you even start the hiring process for specific roles is just making sure you know exactly what you're looking for from the get-go. There is nothing more frustrating for candidates and also for you guys, maybe as hiring managers or talent acquisition people, than having to refresh job descriptions, having to redo searches, having to turn down candidates because they don't quite fit the job description that you've got right now, but in a month's time then have to go back to those candidates because they then fit what you're looking for as well. So making sure before you even start looking at hiring that you are completely clear with everyone involved, every key stakeholder, on exactly what you're looking for, and also stress test it. Look out there on the market, have a look, speak with candidates on the market, understand what your competitors have hired previously, look at historically what you've hired and what's been successful. Is that exactly what you're looking for now? What is the role going to be, and what does that person look like from a technical skill set perspective? It's also really important to look at, so how does this person fit within our company? What do we want them to bring? Are they going to be a leader? Do they need to have a cultural fit? Do they need to have management experience? If you're picking someone straight out of college, straight out of university, when have you done that before? What did they look like? Do they know anyone that potentially could be a really good fit for the firm? So making sure that you really understand what you're looking for from the get-go will help to reduce down any concerns, first of all, any delays in timeline, because at the end of the day, if you post a role, it's probably because you have demand and you need something done sooner rather than later. But it also, which I think a lot of people forget about, the longer a role is out there, the more that candidates on the market start to think, oh, is there something wrong with that role? Is it not paying enough? Is the cultural fit not good? Is that aligning with actually what reviews we're seeing and what I've heard from the market? So be clear on what you're looking for. And once you've got that, get started with the hiring process.
And on here, I can actually provide two very relevant case studies that I personally have experienced in the recent 6 months trying to hire, keeping in mind that these are incredibly senior and very highly visible roles within these companies. So case study number one, they had the role open for 6 months before engaging in our support. And certainly upon engaging in our support, we asked them all the usual questions of what the obstacles were when it came to hiring, but more importantly, why the role has been open for so long. We were given a slew of explanations, but frankly, the bottom line was that the hiring team had no idea what they were looking for. And as executive search consultants, we go out there and we don't just look for applicants, we look for competent, capable individuals that can do the job. And many a times this means looking at competitor companies, looking at specifically going out and quote unquote headhunting someone to join your business. But at that senior level, people do talk. And the amount of people I had come across who refused to even entertain a first conversation because they heard through the grapevine that, you know what, the hiring manager just doesn't know what they're looking for. Hey, I heard that they actually changed the hiring manager because the expectation was so unrealistic. I don't want to work for a team like that. And listen, the thing is, changing the job spec and finding out that you want something else, it's fine. Everyone changes their mind, which brings me on to case study number two, working on a senior sort of executive level hire for a client of mine. And so throughout the interview process after the first shortlist, they had expressed interest in exploring other avenues when it comes to candidacy. And in fact, a very crucial part of the skill set, they decided, you know what, it's actually not that important anymore based off on all the candidates we have seen. And so at this point, we had a frankly very serious conversation about what is available on the market. And going back to what your project timeline looks like, what your launch plans look like, and also what the cost of not having this person on to support these projects look like, we did come to a conclusion that there is genuinely nobody better on the market at this time and place for your hire. And so having that flexibility to change the job spec, have consult with an external person who, essentially has their ear to the ground, right? Talking to candidates and possible candidates every single day so that they can tell you, listen, these are what the numbers look like right now. You have 200 possible good fits for this role, but only 50 are willing to move forward because the other 150 are unwilling to make a change right now because they have a lot going on in their lives. They are a great fit, but they're just not in your local area and you refuse to have this role remote. That's fine, that's your prerogative, but consulting with someone externally who does have their ear to the ground like that with the talent pool is extremely helpful in understanding whether your needs, or sorry, whether your wants are realistic.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Crystal. I think it's probably one of the bigger mistakes. And I think on that note as well, it's discussing as well with someone that isn't part of the internal process, someone that doesn't really have any desire, not desire, that's probably the wrong word to use in this case, but no one that's got kind of strings attached to the process, someone that can be completely honest and brutal and transparent in terms of what the market is, how you are maybe positioned as a client in the market as well, and actually what you need to do in order to bring in the right person for the position right now. Another thing that is, I'd probably say this one's a little bit more of a difficult one to discuss, because it really depends on the type of client and the type of role. And obviously, when we're talking about the mistakes and how to fix them, it's very much a case-by-case basis as well. Yes, you can have a standard process throughout, but you might have to flex a little bit depending on the level of the role or the type of person that you're trying to bring in. But actually, the interview process scheduling, yes, you need to look at being quick, but you also need to make sure that you're getting all the information and insight that you need to make the right decision, as the client, but also for the candidate as well, making sure that they have all that information, because again, candidates make their decision based on information, not based on time. But a common mistake that we see as well is sometimes scheduling interviews too closely together, having back-to-back interviews. That can actually cause a little bit of an issue in terms of, one, the analysis of the interview process. You need some time to debrief, to sit down and think, hey, what were the positives from that interview? What would they need to improve on? And actually, what were the negatives from that before jumping straight into another one? Whereas if you do back-to-back interviews, sometimes it can all kind of blur into one, and then becomes a little bit difficult to remember what the positives were from candidate A that you had the first interview with compared to candidate C. That can then cause a few issues when trying to move forward, especially if you're trying to move multiple candidates, which again is a mistake that a lot of people have in their hiring process, especially when you're trying to move as many candidates forward to late stage interview from the initial discussions. Right, Crystal?
Yes, said
Yeah,
that very well.
thanks. Okay, anything else that you want to pick out on at this point in time, Crystal?
Um, I think just one last thing on this topic, when it comes to common mistakes, I think is, trying to use the same recruitment technique for all roles. Now, of course, recruitment processes look different for different seniority levels, right? A more junior role, perhaps you go through a couple rounds, including a technical round. Sometimes individuals are put through tests before kind of coming to a final decision. With senior hires, that's complicated. You've got opinions upon opinions. You've got cultures to consider. You've got, oh, how do they talk? How are they going to, represent our company when they go out and meet with external stakeholders? So I guess it all comes down to being prepared from the get-go to understand what it is you are looking from this hire, not from this candidate, but from this hire. And sometimes even breaking it down to, listen, out of 5 stars, how many number of stars do they hit for this particular criteria? Instead of relying on qualitative know-how, quantitative data can help you come to that decision much easier and better. But making sure that you are applying also an approach that works for any particular niche is effective as well. I mean, recruiting within medical affairs is going to be incredibly different to recruiting within process development, right? And having a one size fits all might not necessarily work. But once again, do not go back and forth into, well, let's try this method, let's try that method. And then just making sure you are consulting externally with someone who can give you an objective and frankly brutal insight into how your process is impacting your brand on the market. It all comes down to that. The brand in the market is the biggest thing. You can have the biggest brand and the best name in the market, but it can go to the ground at the snap of a finger. We've seen it before, right? And then it ends up being incredibly hard to fill that role.
Yeah. I think now more than ever, from my experience, and even speaking with people that have operated within this market for the last, 27, 30 years, now more than ever, it's a level playing field. The big pharmaceutical companies that have these amazing brand names and these massive pipelines, they're not necessarily the most favored companies. When we looked at 2021, especially, I guess after the pandemic, all the excitement with all the investment that was happening, going into these really exciting seed Series A funded biotech companies, people then went through a period where all the layoffs happened because actually they weren't able to get products through to clinic or kind of continue with the hiring process. So people don't really care too much now about the name. They don't really care too much about how much funding you have. They don't care too much actually about what the pipeline looks like in all cases. So making sure that you have a really good brand in the market by making sure that you start with the little things in terms of the hiring process, making sure that you're mitigating any errors or mistakes that you might have. People talk, it's a small industry.
It's small.
Very small. Okay, we should probably move on, right? So obviously, as a search firm ourselves, we definitely want to talk about, working with external agencies, working with specialist recruiters within the life sciences space. We're here for a reason. I think if you find the right search firm that's able to, not only discuss your brand and your firm within the market to get positive communication out there, but also utilizing a specific area which within they focus in, whether that be their specialism within technical operations, whether it be within regulatory affairs, whether it be within commercial. Definitely start having conversations with external agencies. Yes, there are those ones that are there just to deliver CVs. And they do a great job on certain roles. Nothing against those guys whatsoever. But if you are finding that you've got a very niche role that you know is an important hire, have those conversations with specialist niche agencies out there. Ask them to evaluate your hiring process, because a lot of the time they are working with your competitors. They have worked with other companies such as yourselves. They have been able to turn them around. So making sure that you do have those conversations externally. I'm sure, Crystal, we'd be more than happy to be as brutal and honest with people as possible in terms of what their brand looks like in the market, whether their hiring process is good or bad, and actually what they need to do in order to have a more positive process.
Absolutely. And whichever firm you decide to explore in the future, you do need to make sure that they are happy to give you that very frank and brutal feedback. Asking them what bottlenecks you have in the recruitment process and having them answer very honestly is very essential. Now, you don't necessarily have to take that on. No one's necessarily saying, you must take this advice or you're never going to hire. No, but it's always great to have a third opinion. And I think, with that being said, we want to open an invitation for anybody who has any questions. If you are going through some things with your hiring process, feel free to reach out and we can have a chat about what potentials are preventing you from having a more efficient process. Um, just a confidential, casual conversation. If we know anything from the market, especially, I think what's most crucial is if we hear anything on the ground, when it comes to from the actual talents themselves, that can help inform you what is the best way to move forward. If you're looking to make any changes in your recruitment process, is it a matter of having to upskill your hiring managers when it comes to interviewing these individuals?
Yeah, and we're coming with experience. I think that's really important to say. We've got 37 years of doing this, over 15,000 placements across 42 different countries, supporting, global pharmaceutical companies all the way down to seed funds, supporting VCs, private equities with their portfolio businesses. So we've pretty much seen it all. There's probably no area we haven't been able to support in so far. And like Crystal said, we are more than happy to sit down with you, whether you're currently hiring, whether you're looking to hire in the future, and to give you a brutal, honest review of your hiring process, what your brand looks like in the market, and how you might be able to turn that around in order to effectively secure that top 1% talent that is going to help you become successful, whether that be the cultural success that you're looking for within your business, or whether that's really just finding someone that's able to support you in getting that product out into the market to help start saving lives. And I guess at this point, unless you've got anything else to add here, Crystal.
No, I think ending it here is great. I mean, we want to open the floor up. If anyone has any questions, our moderators are here to share with us that we can answer live. Or if you have anything you want to discuss outside, I believe we'll be sending around emails as well to all the participants. Feel free to reach out. I mean, we're accessible via LinkedIn. We're accessible via email, phone as well, if that's your preferred method of communication. And we'll find some common time to have a chat.
Lovely. Thank you both. All right. We don't have any questions through, but I just want to thank everybody again for attending. And as Crystal said, we'll send out a survey after this, and I'm sure the guys will be in touch to get some direct feedback as well. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to end the webinar, and feel free to get in touch.
Thanks.